At this very late date, Joe Biden is now claiming, in what is quite obviously a scam, that he's going to give some border security the old college try. Well, I guess I can try to do something. Here's Joe Biden talking to Univision in the last 24 hours.
Have you made a final decision on taking executive order in terms of what you want to do at the border? That includes the power to shut down the border as it was suggested.
Well, it suggested that. We're examining whether or not I have that power. I would have that power under the legislation when the border has over 500,000 people, 5,000 people a day trying to cross the border because you can't manage it, slow it up. There's no guarantee that I have that power all by myself without legislation. And some have suggested I should just go ahead and try it. And if I get shut down by the court, I get shut down by the court. But we're trying to work through that right now.
I like the fun game he's playing where it's not already federal law that the federal government's supposed to enforce our border. For more on this, Congressman Mark Green joins us now. He's the chair of the Homeland Security Committee, and he's on the phone. Hello, sir. Good to have you back with us.
Hey, Vince. Great to be on the show with you. So
you've got the president now claiming, you know what, maybe I'll have to take some executive action to secure the border. What do you make of that?
You know, this whole ruse is what I call it, is really just to help with the political battle that the president's in. He knows this is a losing issue. It's an 80-20 issue for Americans. And these talks are just, they're just that. To point back to legislation to say that legislation is required for him to take executive action on the border, shutting the border down, is deceptive because there is in code right now, under emergency conditions, under crisis conditions, the authority for him to do that. And just this morning, finally, Alejandro Mayorkas said it was a crisis. So they should act and act now.
Yeah, they should have been acting like this for a long time, obviously.
Yeah.
On Alejandro Mayorkas, sir, there is we are still awaiting the infamous walk down the hallway of the articles of impeachment for Alejandro Mayorkas. My understanding is that an expectation that it was going to happen this week has been delayed. It instead will happen next week. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so we got some requests from the other side of the building to wait a week, and that's what we're going to do. I think we're bringing it down Tuesday now. That's the plan. The plan was to do it this afternoon at 5 p.m. It's all about the Senate's schedule as well. They have to be in session, and their calendar has to support it. So the plan is Tuesday afternoon, I believe.
Tuesday afternoon, the articles of impeachment will be walked down. Chuck Schumer, the expectation is that he is going to look to rapidly dismiss the impeachment trial and suggest that they don't even need a trial. We just need to dismiss these articles of impeachment. If he can do that, why couldn't Republicans do that in the first place with those Trump impeachments?
Yeah, they'd have to have the votes, and I think you might recall a few Republicans actually voted in support of those. So it's that was a huge failure on our party side and on individuals in the Senate. So absolutely, what he's going to do, I think, is vote to table it as soon after I read it. So if not immediately, the next day.
Is there any sort of maneuvering available to Republicans in the Senate in order to get a trial actually underway?
I think that's perhaps why the Republicans called us and said, "Hey, can we buy some time here?" I think they're over there lobbying, a few of the Democrats to try to get this thing to halt the tabling motion. If that happens and they're able to pull that off, then we'll go probably to the committee level to hear this trial. I doubt they'll allow it for a cabinet secretary at the full Senate level. But we're prepared. The managers and the staff are prepared to execute a trial either in committee or in the full Senate.
Why would any Senate Democrats be willing to help Republicans with this?
Well, they got to go where this issue, if they vote against holding Mayorkas accountable. There's a vast number of people who typically vote Democrat out there in America going, this is unsustainable, this is crazy. And so that's why you're getting Biden yammering about, come on, please send me some legislation so I can get 5,000 a day in. They're doing that because they recognize it's a problem. There are Democrats out there. They don't want to have this trial play out on national television. But there are Democrats who might get hurt by just simply tabling Accountability America. So that's the hope anyway.
Interesting. So, yeah. What do you think the chances are that Alejandro Mayorkas feels any sense of shame about all of this? I mean, it's a pretty big deal. The United States House of Representatives delivering an impeachment for you. Do you get the impression that he cares?
You know, I've heard his pushback on all this, and he vigorously defends himself. I doubt very seriously he feels any shame. You know, he is the first sitting cabinet secretary to be impeached in the history of the country, and he'll have to wear that until whenever another one is done. But you know, I don't think he feels shame at all. I think Mayorkas thinks he's done exactly what they intended to do.
Sure.
And so, no, I doubt very seriously there's any shame involved.
Right, yeah, and if there was any shame, he'd probably be working to actually secure the border to make it so that the problem was going away, but that's not what they're doing.
Yeah, and I don't know him personally. You know, he's come to my office a couple of different times to talk about things, but I don't know him personally. I just know I've read his work when he was a prosecutor, you know, federal prosecutor. I've read some of the cases that he brought, and then I've watched him in this job and in his previous jobs under Obama. I mean, this guy is a smooth operator. He's very smart. He is very slippery when he's under testimony. He doesn't answer questions. I don't think he feels one bit of remorse.
From your perch as the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, what are the threats, as you understand them right now, from the open border? We keep hearing that the FBI's Christopher Wray is raising all sorts of red flags, that we have deep national security threats now tunneled into the country.
Yeah, so Christopher Wray is probably worried about, you know, of course, the terrorist stuff, and that is a huge threat because it's an exponential increase in the number that have been apprehended, which means in that known got-away number and then the unknown got-away number, because the border's essentially open, we have no idea of knowing who's in there. And if they're apprehending more, that means that the bad guys are hitting the sort of net at a much higher rate, which means they're in. Now, the other issue is the Chinese. I mean, you don't leave China with, you know, who has this incredible social credit score. You don't get on an airplane, fly to Latin America, and walk up unless the Chinese Communist Party is aware of it. And what we've seen is unprecedented. Last year, 24,000 or 25,000 came in. So far this year, already well over 22,000. The highest year before that was 1,800. So China's doing something. And we know we've seen their quasi-tourists overwhelm military installations with photo cameras. They just bum rush them, and then, you know, they get apprehended. But we are aware that there are people in those groups just being released into the country that have former ties to the People's Liberation Army. So Mayorkas is putting the country's national security at dire risk. Now, you layer into that the fentanyl, you layer into that the crime nexus that has formed between the Mexican cartels, Latin American cartels, and our gangs. And there's some really substantial reporting in San Francisco, of all places, of how the Honduran cartels have connected with the gangs there and built this nexus of crime. And that's hurting Americans. It's killing Americans. And so it's bad all around. Human trafficking, I mean, the costs of an open border financially, you know, not just the human cost, but the financial costs are something like $450 billion that we discovered from our investigation. So this is a wound that the country will feel for a very long time.
Those tens of thousands of Chinese men who keep pouring into the country, and China, by the way, refuses to take them back, which it makes the problem even worse for us. That did not come up. According to the White House readout of the phone call, the call that Joe Biden had with Xi Jinping, this was not discussed. How dangerous of an omission is that?
Well, I think it's ridiculous that the president wouldn't admit it. You know, the Chinese are not stupid. They've watched the Russian model in Ukraine, where the little green men, as they called them, migrated into Ukraine, built homes in the Donbas region, and then voted to have Russia come in and take over. I'm not suggesting that that's what China's going to do. They're not invading the United States, but very clearly they want to destabilize the country. And they'd be very happy to do some disruption if we ever went to defend Taiwan. So if you're not smart enough to see this as a threat and bring it up to the Chinese premier, then you really don't belong in the office.
I think we had another congressman in the last few days refer to this as potentially sleeper cells of Chinese nationals here in the United States, referring to the exact thing that you said, which is this idea that should there be an invasion of Taiwan, that Chinese nationals here in the United States could serve to be destabilizing in some way. Is that your view?
Yeah, absolutely. So you think of the railheads. If we were going to move military forces to the Pacific, you got, let's say, an installation at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, or Fort Hood, Texas. They're going to have to do a railhead to the port to send their equipment over. Well, I mean, there's opportunities for sabotage. There's the power grid. There's, other infrastructure that would be at risk. And if I were an enemy, that's exactly what I would do to destabilize the country. So, again, the fact that they can't conceptualize this. Now, I think there are elements at DOD who have. I know for a fact they're starting to think about this, but the president and the Homeland Security Secretary don't seem to care.
So the Pentagon is contemplating the risks of our open border right now, but the White House doesn't care.
That's correct. There are contingency plans being, worked on at DOD.
It is that sign of how dangerous things are getting. Congressman Mark Green, you are the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, and we're grateful for your time today, sir. Thank you very much for stopping by.
Thanks, Vince. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Good to talk to you.